What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 100 episodes recorded with those very executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, Cigna, and Google, the answer is clear. They learned lessons in leadership from the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. Some of our guests' athletic experience earned them a place in their sports Hall of Fame, like Chick-fil-A Chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claimed they were terrible in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them lessons they still use as leaders today. In partnership with Maxwell Leadership, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful, positive change in your own organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Angela Ahrendts, longtime CEO of Burberry and Senior Vice President of Apple Retail. Today, she serves on the board of Ralph Lauren, Airbnb, and Save the Children International, a charity focused on improving the lives of at-risk children worldwide. She has been named to the Forbes Most Powerful Women list an incredible 8 times, and her favorite titles are Loving Wife, Mom, Sister, Daughter, and Friend. I am so excited to learn how her participation in gymnastics and tennis shaped her leadership journey.
We're in the people business. You don't believe us because many people have stood here and told you this before. But if you don't believe us, you're going to hold us back. You'll just be cancer in the culture. Look, we're going to turn this around. We're going to make it number one in the sector in the next 5 years. We are going to put together the best-in-class team, and the only way we're going to win is by working so closely together. I'd call it a P&I, people and the impact that they can make.
Angela, thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's an honor to be with you today.
We've been doing this for a little more than 2 years, coming up on 3 years, and I have not yet had the honor of welcoming another Ball State graduate to the podcast. Cardinal like me, President Mearns of the university connected us after both of us had the opportunity to be commencement speakers over the most recent years. And I'm fascinated by a charity that you have really taken to. I want to learn more about Save the Children. Of all the places you could have thrown yourself at this stage in life and career, what was it about what they do that brought you to them?
I always knew I would end up in the nonprofit sector. 6 months into COVID, I had left Apple just 9 months before. I'd already joined the Charity Water Board, and I was on the Oxford Advisory Board, which was more of a foundation, et cetera. So I was already doing 3 or 4 nonprofits. And they were fulfilling and terrific, but having grown up literally less than 5 miles away from one of the largest orphanages that was in this small town in Indiana, it would break my heart as we drive by over the holidays. And I'm one of 6 kids, so I'm from this giant loving family, and you drive by this orphanage, and it's haunted me my whole life. So when my husband and I were blessed to have the ability to open our own foundation, we said that ours will be all for children in the county where we grew up. Save the Children was a big global organization, and the focus is women and children. I chair Save the Children, so it's a very different role. We have 30 offices around the world with incredible chairmen and incredible CEOs, and they each do things in their own countries, and then they lean in also to the most marginalized children in the world. And it just felt like it was a calling, because it's children focused, and that's kind of always been what's broken my heart. It's not their fault where they're born, and it's a very fixable problem. So
that's so powerful. And when you look at the numbers, I've spent some time on the website trying to wrap my arms around the challenge you face. Sometimes I think part of the reason that people lose touch with the size of the mission, or even the mission itself, is because we get lost in the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So daunting. You say it's fixable. The numbers don't overwhelm you?
Oh, there's not a night I go to sleep without praying for help and guidance and support and for the madness to stop. Of course, climate has caused it in a number of countries, but the UN Sustainable Goals were focused to fix some of that. Then COVID enabled all the conflict that you see in Ethiopia and Afghanistan and one would argue Ukraine. Everything's gone backwards 10 years. That's what's daunting. Like, how do you stop this? You just want to be able to use whatever experience you have, whatever expertise you have, whatever connections or partnering. I'm a connector. I'm an enabler. That's always what I've done in big business. And this is a big business. It's just, you're not selling phones, you're saving lives. Therefore, it's even more heart-wrenching. You feel just 100 times more responsible. My mother also grew up in an orphanage for 5 years and would tell the stories of her life there. Her parents had gotten divorced and her mother put her and her sister into an orphanage, and her sister moved with her father after a year, but my mom was waiting for 5 years for her mom to come back and she never did. Knowing that as a young girl, that broke my heart, and then the orphanage broke my heart. And so to me, when Save called, it just felt like the stars were aligned. And with my experience now, maybe I could finally make an impact and get a little peace of mind helping more children. It is a calling. It is where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing everything in my power. We have an incredible organization, but the part I don't understand is why the media doesn't talk more about it. I don't understand why society isn't outraged over the largest hunger crisis of our generation. It breaks my heart so bad and nobody else even seems to know about it.
That would be why you were the person called to do it. You're going to be the one that can use the very things that have made you successful so far in other aspects of life to draw attention. I'm fascinated when you say that Burberry set you up for Apple and Apple set you up for Save. What do you mean by that? How did what you've experienced set you up for this?
It's funny. Most people want to focus on, oh, she went from fashion to tech to an NGO. It's less the sector. When I say set up, we're all on a leadership journey. We're all humans. We're all coaches. Our job is to build incredible teams and then unite those teams around this bigger mission that no individual could accomplish. It takes a movement to do it. I've been in New York for a number of years and over a whole complex portfolio of businesses, Lucky Brand, Juicy Couture. I mean, we would acquire 20 some odd businesses a year and work with amazing, amazing founders and partnering them with operational executives in order to drive, uniting two totally different types of teams. It's funny, I didn't call it leadership back then. I was their partner. It was my job to, yes, identify and to do the business case, et cetera, but then it was my position to integrate and to help them write the business strategies. If we bought the business for 40, 50, 60 million, how do we get it to $1 billion in 5 years? The founders were visionary creatives, and the corporation in New York, they were so operationally geared, brilliant on logistics, et cetera. So how do you partner these two together? But again, I wasn't the leader. I was the partner. If I can build trust with these founders and the corporation already trusted me, it's kind of like running a relay race and handing that baton off. Or basketball, you got to pass it at the perfect time. It's no different in business. Everybody needs to be focused on the same play, and everybody's got to know where they have to be, and those handoffs have to be seamless. So I learned a tremendous amount in New York. I turned Burberry down originally because I thought I'd get bored. I was used to working with 30, 40 brands, not one, but it was so global. We had 11,000 people around the world, 20 some odd offices. I now was 100% accountable. Now you got to step it up. And now you have to realize that anything you say, they will do. Be careful what you say. You learned the cultures and you learned how universal leadership is. Being present and aware and kind and doing unto others. That plays from China to France to India to Dubai. I had united people in America, and that was your comfort zone. Now something so global with so many diverse people all uniting around doing something so incredible and at speed because the world was changing so dramatically. Only then did I understand the responsibility of leading people and the power of uniting them and inspiring them and getting them all in the same lane and towards this bigger mission purpose. And then you step into Apple and you go from 11,000 to 55,000 employees, incredibly global, and the different layers of government you were dealing with and the different, CEOs you were dealing with. It was just a whole nother level. I walked in, my warm-up was Burberry.
Right.
How do you take all of those lessons you learn and just apply them? It has nothing to do with fashion or tech. You're in the people business. That's why we were able to hit the ground running at Apple and just unite that team as quickly as possible and use technology, et cetera, to do it. And that's really what SAVE is. You've got to deal at a whole nother level in order to get people to lean in, get them to contribute at the level that you need, get them to partner.
It is a natural progression then. You're not in the fashion business. You're not in the tech business. You're in the people business. I love that. As you said, you didn't call it leadership. You were a partner, but is there any greater form of leadership than partnership? I read an interview when you became CEO of Burberry in which you said, we're only going to be as good as our people. Servant leadership is a phrase that's very important to you. Tell me about where leadership lessons grew for you. Where in your journey did you start to really first learn teams as you have?
Yeah, it's a kind of a multifaceted question for someone like me who's one of 6 kids. I would tell you I was born into a team.
That's true. You could add a starting basketball team there.
Yeah. My parents were both into sports, which is why we were into so many sports. I think that's how you entertain 6 kids. I would call both of my parents coaches, and we were kind of their team. My father coached mostly basketball at the local Y where my brother would play, and he loved helping the community and helping all of these high schoolers. Dad was a life coach. Yes, he coached sports, and he grew up doing sports all through Butler University, and I was the sponge. I was the introvert, so he knew I was listening, so he would just fill my mind. And then, as my mother, we were raised very spiritual and went to church and 1 or 2 times a week, et cetera. Between the two of them, they were so positive. They celebrated, encouraged, and taught. My mom would walk around the golf course with us every swing, do this or do that. My mom didn't miss a gymnastics meet, a track meet, a tennis tournament, both of them. I mean, my dad obviously worked, but they were the coach in the car. They were the coach when you were there. It's really funny because I don't really remember the names of my coaches in high school. The first thing that came to mind was mom and dad.
Yeah.
They coached and taught and encouraged. It was incredible. And I don't think I was born competitive. I was born a spectator. Sports taught me to lift up. It taught me that I was accountable and that I needed to be disciplined and I needed to work and I needed to listen and I needed to watch other people and their techniques and how they were doing things. I think it was part of my spectator personality. So I ended up in a lot of individual sports. It's funny, I rarely did a team sport because I was born into a team, maybe. I don't know, but it brought me out. Practice and practice and practice and practice because I was never really great at anything. The more that you practiced, the better you got. And then the more confident you got, kind of like that self-fulfilling prophecy. It helped me become more compassionate, more empathetic because you are around people and people are winning and people are losing. And how do you handle it when you lose or they lose and somebody's in pain? So much comes out of sports that transcends right into leadership. I don't think there's a difference between sports and business. The disciplines, the rigor, the leadership attributes, one you happen to call it sports and one we happen to call it business. And we call it a coach and we call it a leader. But I would argue there's very, very similar attributes, personality traits.
You're speaking every bit of my language. One of the questions we love to ask is about the idea of building a team. Too often the word team gets thrown around way too easily. Many of them don't really have teams. What they have are a bunch of individual contributors who are working together with the same business card. As someone who has built teams, maybe one of the most important ones of your life, talk to us about how you get those independent thinkers and contractors to come together and imagine themselves doing something of high purpose.
Like we said, we're in the people business. You come into an organization, you have to assess very, very quickly who is united around the strategy. And honestly, too, what is their mission and purpose? Because great business is the output of the mission and purpose. Revenue is the output of a united team doing great things collectively.
Yep.
At Burberry, within my first couple of months, Burberry pulled the top 150 people from around the world and called an executive offsite. I spent 3 days with them. And why were we having it? Because we weren't united. We had a lot of breakout sessions. Christopher and I had a high-level vision, but it was a massive pivot. And we wanted to bring everyone in, unite them around where we wanted to go, et cetera, and then break down all the different component parts, because it's not one thing. I was just trying to feel everyone, and I could feel the cynics and I could feel the know-it-alls. So at the very end of the offsite, I just said, look, we're going to turn this around. We're going to make it number one in the sector in the next 5 years, and we're going to do it with or without you. You don't believe us, because many people have stood here and told you this before. But if you don't believe us, you're going to hold us back. So I need to know who's on the bus. And if you're not, it's okay. I'll give you the most incredible severance package. Come to me now. But we are going to put together the best-in-class team. And the only way we're going to win is by working so closely together. We need to trust each other. We need to finish each other's sentences. If you don't trust a team member, or you don't trust me, or you don't trust Christopher, we're not going to get there. You'll just be cancer in the culture. Ooh. I was so open and honest about it up front. And again, I was new. Most of them had never even met me before. I think they thought, oh my God, here's this American woman and she's nuts.
She's lost her mind.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think they knew I was serious enough, because in the same meeting, I said, I'm promoting Christopher Bailey. He's the brand czar. Anything the consumer sees will go through his office first. There is one brand, because we had 30 different expressions all over the world. So we're not going to do what's best for you or your department or your country. We're going to do what's best for the brand. Leading up to that final speech, I had been very explicit over the course of the couple of days. We laid the groundwork in a lot of respects and just put culture as this thing bigger than them. And by the time I got to that final speech, they were like, whoa, I think she's serious.
Yeah.
It's leaders' jobs to rise up and to look out 3, 4, 5 years and to feel what's coming, because if you're not doing it, who is? We created the Burberry Foundation. We put 1% of our profits into the Burberry Foundation, and we had a tagline throughout the world: how many lives can we touch and transform by the power of our performance? And that had nothing to do with fashion. We knew we had to do better fashion and produce it better and do more incredibly digital things to raise awareness and get people to buy our things, et cetera. But we had a bigger goal that investors never asked and shareholders didn't care about. But that was the glue that lured people, retained great people. And of course, we brought in incredible experts. I mean, that's a given. But to your point, you can hire great individuals, but hiring great individuals that are selfless, that are smart enough to know they alone can't do it, that if they work as a world-class team, we will win. We can conquer the world. So you build a team by building trust and by bringing in people whose values are aligned, who want the same thing that you want, who agree on the mission and the purpose.
It was that culture and sense of purpose, the foundation that you're talking about here. How many lives can we transform today through our efforts? Wow. Most people are thinking, we're just in retail. We're just trying to sell scarves and nice looking shirts.
Yeah.
You wanted to make sure that's not the way they saw what you were there collectively to do.
No, and it's so funny because I've said this before, but people want to talk about profit. They want to talk about revenue or a P&L.
Right.
I'd call it a P&I, people and the impact that they can make.
Wow.
That's how I went into Apple. I took the job to create a program that would help educators and entrepreneurs to make an impact in communities. I didn't take a job to run retail stores. It's funny because Steve Jobs said that retail, they weren't allowed to sell. Like nobody in retail gets paid a commission. He said their job was to teach them something they didn't know, all through the lens of education. So Steve started that when he put in the first retail store.
I love it.
But we didn't have a formal program or curriculums across all the different mediums. formalized and putting it out there so people knew when to come and what to learn, et cetera. And that's when we just connected the dots. And we asked them, what do you think Apple should be doing more of in your community? So when you say servant leadership, it wasn't me coming in and say, we're going to do this. No, we did a crowdsourcing exercise and we asked the 55,000 employees around the world. Therefore, when we launched it, they owned it and they were a part of helping create it. And they wanted to teach and they wanted to help the communities that they lived in. For 6 months, they helped us decide what was that impact we wanted to make, specifically on who, how were we going to do it. They felt there was a senior population that we could lean into more. They felt that entrepreneurs would benefit more if we got them together and helped them share. And we shared with them things they could run their business better, smarter on our devices. Teachers, educators. We came up with Teachers Tuesdays and invited all the teachers in after hours, and the teams would lean in and keep them up to date on apps and things their students were looking at that they may not be familiar with. And then we would measure it. And a retailer doesn't typically measure how they make a person feel when they come in and how many times are they coming back to learn and to engage with other people. The in-store experience called Today at Apple, helping the community, was all centered around things they were doing on their devices and trusted Apple to teach them anyway.
Not a P&L, but a P&I, people and impact. You know, one thing all leaders are challenged by is the rise in technology. When you worked there at Apple, you were looking at the balance between technology and human interaction. I love a great quote you had. I don't care how advanced technology gets. I don't think there's anything that can replace looking someone in the eyes, touching their hand. What do we all need to know about finding that balance between all the incredible things that technology might bring to us, but how we have to also stay connected humanly?
I'm glad you brought it up because at every offsite at Apple, for the entire 5 years I was there, we would always start every big meeting with Steve's road sign that said, technology alone is not enough. It's technology combined with humanity that will impact the world and make our hearts sing. Mm. By the time somebody gets into the store, they want that human connection. The physical stores had to be the best 3D experience, human connection. There's still today a person who stands in the front of that Apple store and greets you.
Yep.
How can I help you? Do you have an appointment? What are you here for? It says a little nicer than that. But they're there because they couldn't do it online.
Right.
And then that app had to be the 4D experience, more immersive and more innovative for a totally different experience. Apple.com had to be the best 2D experience, deep learning. We put the human back in. So when you called, you actually could see a human in the same retail shirt that they were wearing in the store. So it just wasn't a voice on the end of the phone. We turned all of that to video if they wanted. You could still call. And it's funny, we called it humanizing technology. We were very, very focused on it.
Yeah. You know, we've talked a lot about Steve Jobs. I never got a chance to meet him. I don't think you did either.
No.
I did see that you have spent some time with Bill Gates. Is there something you've learned from studying either of those men that's helped shape you?
Yeah. When you would read so much about Steve, he would use his instincts, but he would go deep. He would, they claim, read incessantly about something to learn everything he could about it. That all goes into your head and then it empowers your instincts even more. And then they often said Bill did the same thing. They said that he would take a sabbatical every year and he would take a pile of books. They were both curious. They were continuous students. They never rested on their laurels and said, oh, I know it all. They were constantly on this quest to learn and stay ahead. And I've taken that from both of them. Things are only moving faster and faster and faster. You have to read even more because the world is moving fast and now you're on boards and now you've got to contribute in other ways. And if you are not a continuous student or you are not curious about how ChatGPT works and AI art or whatever, your company's going to fall behind. They're both successful because they were curious. They wanted to learn and grow, and that's inspired me.
I am on my 5th page of notes here. I'm all over this. This is so many great notes. One of the things you mentioned a couple of different times was offsites and how important they were in your development of your leadership of others. In sports, we do that as well. We go away for training camp. If you're offering a young leader some advice about how to take their team away and maybe build a connection, create a really positive offsite, any tips?
Why are you having the offsite? Everybody wants to know why.
Right.
And they want to know what, and they want to know where you're going and how you're going to do it. So I don't think you can just go in and have a superfluous, it's like I shared on the Burberry story. When you pull people together, you've got from the extreme right brain creatives to the financial people, to the technology people, to the supply chain and logistics teams. You have a dearth of diversity of minds. The goal of any offsite is just for people to connect, to build trust, and to understand and respect each person's position on the team. One of the first offsites at Apple Retail, I said, I had worked closely with Johnny and watched him in the design studio, and the incubation period of a product was 2 years. He was so fastidious about every detail. I got on stage and I said, you guys, if you knew what went through this, they've worked, they've studied, they've created this thing. And now it's our job to take it and to make sure that we communicate everything to customers. And then they do a keynote and he hands this off to us, making them have the same love and adoration. And it's not that they didn't, but a lot of new people coming in. So it's the trust and it's the respect and the admiration for every single person. And they don't all speak the same language, an extreme creative and an extreme left brain. It takes every single member on that team to bring their gifts to bear for that company to be successful. And if they don't respect each other, they're not going to win.
No, I love that idea because the retail folks might just immediately, it's just the next phone. They don't know what that 2 years have looked like for that developer, that Johnny. So I want to bring this back full circle. I'd love to get back to Save the Children story, if we could. Was there a story that drew you that you can share with us that will explain why this mission means what it does to you?
Yeah. Shortly after the Ukraine invasion, I went with the CEO to Poland to see a couple of huge empty buildings and converted them into schools for the children to give them a safe place to go, to be around others. And I sat in a room with 20 teens that left their dads and fled with their mothers or sometimes alone. And they're in this class and you can just see their eyes. It's one of the few times in life I could hardly even carry on a conversation because these souls are just broken. I was so proud of Save's work, giving them a safe place. And they had all these after-school programs so they could continue to learn. And they had all types of psychological counselors there to help them and try and give them a little more normalcy.
What a powerful experience for you to have gotten to see your work in action. It really drives us to be more committed to causes like that. How could we best connect with Save the Children? What is a way that those who might listen, who might be touched by what we're hearing right now, to be able to reach out and help?
No, gosh, Don, thank you so much. The simplest way is savethechildren.com. And there's on the first page, there's a donate. That's if you're an individual. We do a ton with individuals and we need all of that we can get. But I also think that the bigger opportunity, if there's other CEOs and things that are listening, is I would really challenge them on what their company is doing. I would love you to lean into Save. We could partner with you and you could make sure you've got a matching program in place for all of your employees. ESG is obviously on top of mind for most CEOs and everybody's made a lot of progress on the E. I argue the S. Yes, diversity and inclusion are very important under the S, but I think that the next generation is going to want you to play a bigger role when it comes to social responsibility. You can get ahead of it and use NGOs like Save the Children. We can sit with you, we can address your team, we can show you where all of this is going. You can go on trips with us if you want to see firsthand, but pick an NGO and then report at the end of the year how your team is leaning in and how you're contributing. All of these are fixable problems. It's no different than Apple. What should you be doing more of in your community? Then if you can partner with Save and help in bigger areas where your employees' hearts are breaking, why not?
Yep.
Someday I hope a CEO stands up and says, yeah, I'm going to make 1 or 2% less profit in the next couple of years because I'm reinvesting it over here to help on the hunger crisis or to help with education in these countries where kids are suffering. We're so profit-focused and not people-focused.
Yeah. We need to have a P&I, not a P&L. Angela Ahrendts, I'm grateful as a fellow Cardinal. You may not have seen yourself as a leader early in your career. You're certainly one now. Thank you today for being a corporate competitor.
Sorry, I have a kitty down here crying. Sorry. I can hear that. Thank you so much, Don. Really, really appreciated being here.
Before I jump into my top 3 lessons from Angela's interview, I want to thank everyone who has jumped at the opportunity to connect with me on our website. I love hearing from listeners. So if you enjoy the show or want to connect with one of our team this year, I encourage you to reach out to our team at maxwellleadership.com/Don. I look forward to being in communication with you, growing together over this near term. Now, let me give you my 3 takeaways. The first that really stood out to me was that Angela, for all of her success in so many different verticals, did not see herself as having been in the fashion industry or the tech industry. She is in the people business. That was the unifier in everything that she went out to do. She talked about the importance of being in the people business and listening, being present, because when you're present, you're able to get more quick results with your team. The second takeaway for me was her discussion about offsites and the way that they were such an important part of drawing her team together, her getting the best of them, her putting people on the same page. She even gave us some great instruction on how to run a good offsite for our team. And then finally, it really stood out to me that she didn't want to operate under a P&L. She wanted to spend her time focused on her P&I, her people and impact. When she told the story about reaching out, crowdsourcing, and creating an exercise among the 70,000 employees that worked for her at Apple, asking the question, what should Apple be doing in your community? The answers that came back became action points. She improved the relationship she had, not just with the community, but with her team. Angela was an incredible corporate competitor today. And I'm hoping that out of her encouragement, you will be too. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.